My family had a great belief in Hong Kong and this part of the world, and they have always taken a long-term approach. There were many ups and downs, but they stood firm, and I think they've been proved correct.
Sir Michael Kadoorie is visiting Hong Kong's Black Point Power Station.
Nice to see you. Good morning. Good morning.
It is one of the world's largest gas-fired combined cycle power plants.
At the turn of the 20th century, I believe Hong Kong had many opportunities. And one of them, of course, was electricity generation, which is part of everyone's business. And fortunately, my grandfather decided that that was something he would find of great interest. So from the very start, the Kadoorie family have been involved with what in the beginning was Xicun Yunnan and Company, and subsequently became China Light and Power.
Across the harbour from Hong Kong Island was the Kowloon Peninsula, with its small bays and villages. The quiet streets were lit by gas lamps, but there were those who could see potential in this quiet backwater, the promise of growth and prosperity. Men like Robert Xicun, who in 1900 first registered the China Light and Power Company. He and investors were supplying electricity to Guangdong province through the Canton Electric and Fire Extinguishing Company, and reverted to Kowloon to build a small power station in Chatham Row. When the Kowloon Canton Railway opened, China Light and Power was contracted to supply electricity to the station buildings. The future was looking bright. The Kadoorie family was now very much involved. Sir Ellie and his brother Ellis had arrived in Hong Kong. While Sir Ellis invested in hotels, Sir Ellie invested in China Light and Power, and his two sons, Horace and Lawrence, continued this association.
My first recollections of Kowloon were in 1918, that's say the China Light and Power Company, when I accompanied my father to a board meeting of China Light held in the offices of Xicun Yunnan, which were then in St. George's Building. Xicun Yunnan were agents for Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And of course, I was far more interested in Harley-Davidson motorcycles than I was in China Light. And the chairman, Mr. Xicun, seeing my interest, said, "Oh, I will give you one of those." But my father promptly said he will not accept it. And so that was the end of that.
In 1921, the company moved to a new power station at Hock Yuen. 1,000 kilowatts of power was produced, 5 times the initial capacity of the old station. And in 1928, the company gained the franchise to supply electricity to the rural New Territories. The Kadoorie family had also made a home in the vibrant city of Shanghai. Here they became merchants and traders with business interests in many successful companies. Their love and commitment to Hong Kong, however, remained undiminished. As Kowloon continued to develop and the population continued to increase, demand on the China Light and Power Company continued to grow. In 1935, the management, with the support of the board, now under the chairmanship of Lawrence Kadoorie, decided that the station must be expanded. A new powerhouse, workshop and store were all erected on reclaimed land. Hong Kong was gradually developing into a tourist destination and growing in sophistication and glamour. But clouds of war were gathering over the Pacific. War between Japan and China had broken out in 1937. From the border, Japanese columns could be seen bringing in supplies. Reinforcements began to arrive, and the colony prepared for the inevitable. On the 8th of December 1941, Kai Tak Airport and Kowloon were bombed. China Light and Power's engineers blew up the power station to disrupt occupying forces. On Christmas Eve, Hong Kong fell. Allied prisoners were rounded up and would spend the war in military camps. Civilians were imprisoned at Stanley, where the Kadoorie family spent the early part of the war. Later, they and other families were shipped to Shanghai. During the occupation, the staff of China Light and Power were made to restore the supply as best they could and repair cables. 1945, Hong Kong was liberated by the British Navy. Japan surrendered. It was time for Lawrence Kadoorie to return home.
As the Consul General came in, he had a DC-3 plane, and I managed to get on that plane. We got back as far as Kunming. At Kunming, it was extremely difficult to find any transport to get to Hong Kong. And only at first, they absolutely refused to take any passengers, whatever. But at last, I managed to get them to take me and bring me to Hong Kong as freight.
Hong Kong was in a poor state of repair. Electricity was scarcely available. With power from a British submarine, China Light and Power limped back into action.
There was only one turbine working, and there was one cable across the harbour. There were rats everywhere. The place was filthy. But the main thing was to get busy again, and without electricity, you couldn't get busy.
But across the border, events were about to confront Hong Kong with an even greater challenge. On the 1st of October, 1949, Chairman Mao proclaimed the People's Republic of China. Thousands began to flood across the border at Lo Wu. During the war years, Hong Kong's population had shrunk to 500,000, but now it was exploding. The refugees came with few possessions and nowhere to live. Vast squatter communities were quickly established on the hills above Kowloon. Conditions were dangerous and volatile. A devastating fire broke out at Shek Kip Mei squatter camp on Christmas Day, 1953. Over 50,000 people were made homeless overnight. On Boxing Day morning, the government initiated a resettlement housing scheme. With it came an immediate need for a safe and reliable power supply.
After we moved to the resettlement blocks, life became more stable. We had a shared sense of togetherness. We learned to live in harmony, to care for each other, and to help each other. Later in my films, I emphasize unity, friendship, hope and justice. This is all inspired by the hardships and endurance that we experienced in the resettlement blocks.
China Light and Power had to provide electricity for both light and for pumping the water supply. A massive undertaking in a very short space of time.
And they rehoused 15 to 20,000 people very rapidly, and then they carried on from there into subsequently 10, 12, 15-story resettlement blocks.
China Light and Power's commitment to the community extended to the furthest corner of the new territories. Tap Moon Island is an isolated fishing village.
I still remember the day we first got electricity. Mr. Kadoorie came to meet us all and brought his electric fans.
Retired China Light and Power engineers still visit their old customers and friends. The former village head recalls the day before electricity came to the island.
We used to burn a little kerosene lamp to be able to study at night. It was not bright enough for reading. Life became much easier when CLP provided us with electricity.
Both my uncle and father felt they could help at grassroots level. As a result, my father's views were very simple. Anybody who wished to have electricity should have it. And so some of the power lines went to areas which were not economical, but which he knew would grow in the future. The Kadoorie Agricultural Aid Association helped those in the new territories. And this offered an opportunity to see where electricity was needed.
Meanwhile, in Kowloon, manufacturing was beginning to grow and intensified with the arrival of Shanghainese textile industrialists.
CLP played a very pivotal role to support the economic development of Hong Kong, particularly after the war, when Hong Kong's economy started to take off and the manufacturing sector grew very quickly and the demand for electricity grew very rapidly.
China Light had two types of customers, the home and the industrial. Industrial, of course, was a lower charge, but even with that lower charge, after some 10 years, a textile association complained. A commission was called for by the government, and from it came the scheme of control, which exists to this day.
China Light and Power's challenge was to accept the controls while still financing long-term growth to keep up with the expanding population. China Light and Power had to be ready for the capital investment and found itself in need of a strong and committed partner.
China Light foresaw the tremendous increase in demand for electricity that was to take place in the 1960s and 70s. And recognizing that China Light was to need a partner if it was to finance that expansion, Lord Kadoorie approached the Exxon board in New York, and the partnership was forged in 1964.
The strategic partnership with Exxon, which continued for 50 successful years, ensured that China Light and Power could grow. A major engineering project began on the edge of Qingyi Island. 75 acres of land was reclaimed from the hillside to construct this new facility. And just as great a challenge was the installation of the transmission lines.
With our mountainous terrain, it was quite difficult to build power lines, particularly taking the towers up to the different areas. This was accomplished by helicopter, which meant that you didn't have to build roads, and you could leave the terrain in a pristine state.
Dynamic changes took place in Hong Kong in 1960s. Small family industries were on the rise. Local businesses began to prosper. Hong Kong was transforming into an economic powerhouse.
When the Hong Kong economy took off in the 1960s, my father bought 2 shops in Hong Kong. That's when we started to bake in our own workshops. Over the years, Kiwa have grown from a small family business to a Hong Kong household name, and over 60 shops in Hong Kong. Quality was always the first priority to him. No matter how many shops my father opened, quality comes before quantity. This was his firm belief. After we switched from burning wood to using electricity, we had better control of heat and could improve the quality of our bakery. We have been deeply rooted in the city all these years. Hong Kong is at the heart of our business, and we carry Hong Kong spirit.
In order to keep up with the growth in Kowloon, the Hong Kong government launched the New Town Development Program. This was to place huge pressure on China Light and Power. it was time to further increase their generation capacity. Castle Peak was developed in the 1970s and 80s, a state-of-the-art coal-fired power station and the largest in the East. In mid-1990s, the company introduced gas-fired generation in Hong Kong and built Black Point Power Station. With great confidence, China Light and Power embraces the 21st century. Sophisticated modern cities place huge demands on power providers. Hong Kong's infrastructure is at the cutting edge of technology. Chek Kip Airport, CLP's role is to provide absolute security of supply.
We cannot afford to have even 1 second power outage, because you can imagine if you're on an aircraft on final approach, the pilots will see all the landing lights and also the navigation aids, but if it lost for just 1 second, it is not allowable. So that kind of power security is the kind of power security reliability that we want from CLP.
The mass transit system carries millions of people every day. A safe and reliable power supply is critical to its operation. Construction is underway of the first tunnel, part of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. This will link the 3 main cities on the Pearl River Delta.
I believe the opportunities of the past are still opportunities for the future. With 1.2 billion people in mainland China and the need for Hong Kong to connect more and more, we shall have many opportunities.
CLP's annual general meeting in Hong Kong. Sir Michael Kadoorie has been chairman for more than 20 years.
Hong Kong is very much home for the family, and I'm the 3rd generation, and they are 2 further generations. So we very much are belongers here.
Hong Kong has been CLP's home for more than a century, and the Kadoorie family have a very similar association with Hong Kong. So it's not surprising that over time our values have become very assimilated, very close together. We care about Hong Kong. We care that we provide a good service to our customers in Hong Kong.
For CLP Power in Hong Kong, we are doing the whole supply chain. So in a way that we cannot say that supply reliability is not my business, it's somebody else's business, because we have to be fully accountable for it. So if anything happens in the power system, it's CLP Power.
Hong Kong's supply chain includes provision of energy from the generation plants via transmission lines all the way to the customers.
Good morning. Thank you for calling CLP. Would you please provide me your business registration number for our record?
Via call centres online and at customer service centres, dedicated staff are there to help. When a customer needs advice on how to reduce his energy bills, an account manager makes a visit to his home or business.
CLP and Chinky have been working together on energy saving. Since we began using electric stoves, we've saved around 20% fuel cost. There's no more black smoke coming out from our chimney. Our neighbors get along with us much better.
Service to the community is at the company's heart. Technician Kwok Shing was able to provide an emergency generator to an elderly man dependent on a ventilator.
The entire family came out to say thank you. To be able to help them made me happy.
Today, a team is rewiring the home of a partially sighted customer.
係啦，嗰度啦。咁你雙手閂晒咧就，搞掂晒嚇。再嚟多一次啊！你試下。
In Hong Kong and throughout the Asia-Pacific region, China Light and Power's volunteers are involved in a wide variety of community programs.
你哋嘅樣好，我哋喺度好開心。係啊，我哋呢度係一個大家庭嚟嘅，個個都好和氣。係啊。
Fangchenggang coal-fired power station in Guangxi province. Today, Richard Lancaster and William Makata are visiting the second phase of construction at this state-of-the-art coal-fired power station. It has been designed to minimize impact on the environment.
We have had a long history of investment in China. Where CLP can make a difference in China is bringing the know-how and the technology. We are making investments at that very leading edge of low-carbon technology to make a difference in a huge market like China.
China is a country of contrasts, both geographically and economically. Development has been rapid, but there are still many people yet to benefit from the recent advances in the power industry. 3,000 kilometers north is Tian'an Wind Farm, now deep in the chill of winter. The company has invested in over 20 wind farms, helping to meet China's ambitious targets in the provision of renewable energy. In the remote Sichuan mountains is the dramatic Jiangbian hydropower station. Its construction presented formidable challenges.
The logistics was tough, physically getting to the plant, and then managing the construction process, and we were very proud that we managed to do that without any fatalities. CLP's expertise is project management of engineering resources.
Deep inside the mountain is the underground powerhouse. Now fully operational, it is run by China Light and Power. Hydroelectric power plants are dependent on dams. A fish farm project has been created to help maintain the ecological balance and improve the quality of the water. Sichuan Solar Power Station in the hills of Yunnan province. It was designed as an integrated solar agricultural plant. The region is remote and far from market, so the crop would have to be long-lasting and of high value. The research team discovered honeysuckle, a traditional Chinese medicine, which could tolerate the extreme natural conditions. Local villagers, who were hired during the construction phase, now tend the plants.
There's been more work here in the past 2 years. We're happy that we don't have to migrate to the cities anymore.
The solar farm benefits this remote community. Villagers are employed there and are better able to preserve their traditional way of life.
China would need more renewable and clean energy. Nuclear power will continue to be playing a very important part, and CLP is exploring opportunities for us to invest in future nuclear power projects, particularly in the southern part of China.
Lord Kadoorie foresaw the importance of nuclear power over 30 years ago and became a partner in the Guangdong Daya Bay power station.
We can see that this area of the world is going to develop as a neutral point of contact between two ideologies, two different ideologies and two different systems of government.
The Kadoories and China Light and Power's long relationship with China helped to pave the way for this historic venture. The family has always been open to new ideas and opportunities ever since they first left Baghdad for Bombay more than 150 years ago.
My grandfather and great-uncle were amongst 4 family members coming here to Bombay as it was, and then going on to Hong Kong. My grandfather renovated a school, and I'm trying to re-renovate it today, some 70 years later.
Sir Michael and his wife, Lady Kadoorie, maintain the family's connections with India and are regular visitors. CLP India was established in 2001.
My goodness, what a welcome. As CLP grew, we had to think of diversification. India presents a wonderful opportunity, and we all like going there. But more importantly, with 1.2 billion people, we felt we could contribute.
There is something unique about this company, a company with over 100 years of heritage, and yet which called Asia Pacific home. But I could see in Michael immediately, he almost personifies the things that are unique about CLP, a long-term nature, corporate governance, ethics. It's not about just being successful, it's about being successful in the right way.
India is sophisticated, glamorous, and high-tech, but it is also a land where 300 million people still have no access to electricity. Without power, these children would struggle to keep up with their schoolwork, and education is considered the key to success in life. CLP is one of the largest wind power developers in India. One of its commitments is to preserve the right of access for local communities to their farmlands. The gas-fired combined cycle power plant at Pagutan marked the entry of CLP to the Indian power sector business. In northern India, in the state of Haryana, there is a large coal-fired power station. CLP chose to bid on a supercritical plant to reduce carbon dioxide emissions.
Coal is the fuel of choice. And it's not the fuel of choice because it's the cleanest, but it is just most plentiful. And because it is most plentiful, it is the cheapest, it is the most affordable. And therefore, we have decided that coal, to that extent, is a necessary evil. But if we do participate, let's do it in a manner where we minimize the environmental impact of that fuel. And that's what we try and do.
Every morning, a mobile medical clinic leaves the Jhajjar plant and sets off to the surrounding villages.
The health van is extremely useful for the resident of Jali. Poor people who are struggling from lack of money are benefiting very much. Doctors visit us 3 times a week, and people get free medicines for colds, coughs, headaches, and other things.
To improve the health of local livestock, veterinary clinics have been created to give practical advice and free treatment. In many rural areas, CLP India is supporting projects which lead to the empowerment of women. In Jali, they have employed a young woman to teach sewing classes.
After coming here, they can machine sew their own clothes, as well as men's clothes. Since I have been teaching women, a lot of them have been employed, and many have started their own businesses.
Many children leave school before they can complete their primary education. By providing teacher training at government-run village schools, children are encouraged to stay on. China Light and Power's commitment to education extends to other parts of the region. At Thailand's joint venture solar plant, local children learn about the benefits of renewable energy. China Light and Power's investment in Southeast Asia began in the 1990s. Today, it continues to look for new markets throughout the Asia-Pacific region and is constantly exploring further opportunities.
CLP in Australia, through EnergyAustralia, has grown its generation portfolio and has been a part of leading the change towards a cleaner energy mix for Australia.
EnergyAustralia is wholly owned by China Light and Power. Focus has been centred on the retail business, which has rapidly grown into one of the largest in the country. Across the region, China Light and Power's greatest consideration is to preserve the quality of the environment.
The challenge is how can we say bye-bye to the fossil fuel age and start embracing as soon as we can the future that is based on 100% renewables.
Going for better policy, it has to come from the government. And if the government is hesitant, sometimes because they are not sure whether the key stakeholders in the corporate world is supportive or not, that's the time when CLP should step up and say, we are actually in a position to support you. Let's do it together.
Not everything can be changed overnight. If it's done in a sensible timescale, we can get the improvements that we're looking for without compromising the reliability and without making electricity unaffordable. Ultimately, our goal has to be zero emissions. We need to be a leader, and we're bringing in new devices and new techniques that will add value to the way that we provide electricity.
I'm proud of China Light's record. It has not been an easy task to think of the needs of the future. Historically, we have done this, and we will continue today.